Okay, so we've talked about several different methods for solving proportions. But one method that we haven't talked about yet is this idea of cross products or cross multiplying. And this is a very common method that a lot of people use to solve proportions. In fact, this is how I learned, and this is how most people that I know learned how to solve proportions. And so, if I were to ask somebody, how would you look at this proportion and solve for x? Most people would say, well, I would just cross multiply and then solve for x. And then if I were to follow that up with saying, okay, cool, so why does that work? I would bet that a lot of people would not be able to tell me. And that, I believe, is a problem. That if we're using a method and we don't know why it works, we probably shouldn't be using it. So we should either learn how it works or find a different method to use. So I'm going to show you cross products, and I'm going to show you why exactly it works. And if you understand that and want to keep using it, go ahead. So first thing here is I'm just going to show you what cross products is if you're not familiar with it. So when we have a proportion here and we have a missing value in x, cross products or cross multiplying says that I can take the first fraction's numerator multiplied by the second fraction's denominator, 4 times 35, and that is going to be equal to the first fraction's denominator multiplied by the second fraction's numerator, 10 times x. And from there, that's a pretty simple calculation, simple process to solve for x here. But a lot of people stop there, and they don't care why it works. They don't care what's happening behind the scenes because they get their answer, and that's it, right? But we want to go a step further and figure out what's going on here. So when we're working with fractions, and proportions are fractions, 4 over 10 equals x over 35. One thing that is important about fractions is when we have common denominators, things become a lot easier. So there's a lot of things we can do with fractions with common denominators that we couldn't do with other fractions. So one of those things is that if we have a common denominator, our numerators have to be equal to each other. What do I mean by that? If we have this equal sign here, if this thing is equal to this thing and the denominators are the same, then the numerators have to be the same. That's like saying 2 over 3 is equal to what over 3? Well, that's kind of a dumb question, right? This is obviously 2, right? 2/3 is obviously equal to 2/3. Same concept here. If we can get these denominators to be the same, then our numerators will have to be the same as well, and we can set them equal to each other. So let's try to do that. X over 35, 10 over 4, we want the denominators to be the same. So one thing that I can do to get that is I can multiply each side, each fraction, by the other side's denominator over itself. Right? We have to follow the rules and only multiply or divide by 1 because we can't change the value of anything. So I'm multiplying here by 10 over 10. Over here I will multiply by 35 over 35. And as you can see, that gives us a common denominator here. So if I rewrite this out, I have 35 times 4 right here over 35 times 10. And that's going to be equal to x times 10 is 10x. 10x over 35 times 10. So now that I have these common denominators, these numerators have to be equal to each other. So I can just kind of ignore the denominators altogether now. So I can rewrite this and say 35 times 4 equals 10x. And from there, this is fairly simple, so I'll just solve this. 35 times 4 is 140, and that is equal to 10x. And then from there, we divide both sides by 10. X equals 140 divided by 10, which is 14. And so that's a little look behind the scenes as to why cross products works. Hopefully this clears some things up, and if you feel comfortable using this, if you feel comfortable with the why behind it, go ahead and use it. Otherwise, maybe find a different method.